From the low-budget action film that stole our hearts to the most successful box office opening chapter after chapter, we're excited to say that John Wick 5 has an exciting update. There was a lot of teased information from John Wick's director, Chad Stahelski, including Keanu Reeves' return in John Wick 5. I know, especially after the ending of the fourth movie, which seemed fatal, but maybe it wasn't. Some of us are wondering if we need to prepare ourselves for a future void of John Wick. But don't worry, there is good news that awaits us as well. Before we get into all the tea surrounding John Wick 5, let's appreciate all of the movies in the franchise as a whole. I mean, the multi-million-dollar franchise was created from a low-budget action movie that basically no studio was willing to take a chance on. The action landscape was defined by John Wick when the film's influence spread worldwide. As we knew it, most of the action budget was being invested in superhero films, and most of the martial arts material remained in the Asian market. John Wick stood out as a series that was quality action with a twist, and John Wick as a character became a pop culture figure. John Wick and Keanu Reeves are iconic, and the films have been so positively reviewed and received. What really led to the rise of John Wick? Derek Kolstad started by writing films and knew action cinema very well. He knew how to work in low-budget movie making, and eventually he created a script called Scorn that included world building, which was pretty unique for movies of this style. This script, after a little bit of editing, would become John Wick. The script ended up in Keanu Reeves' hands, and he passed it on to his director friends, hoping they would take it and bring it to life. The two had started an action design company to support the stunt industry called 8711. They knew they could bring something new to the contemporary action scene. Just on their quality of action alone, they could have made something amazing, but that wasn't enough for them. They wanted to produce something that was groundbreaking and different, and they were able to do this in John Wick with an added element of fantasy. It wasn't overdone, mostly just using light to set a tone and explore the perspectives of the main character through the lenses of surrounding characters. They would eventually do something that they knew had to be done. They didn't just create an action movie, they created a world. John Wick's plot and script were immersed in action, combined with story building similar to films like The Matrix and 300. And they knew they could do this with Keanu Reeves. Keanu was someone who could handle and express important story points on a very personal level in between the intense action scenes. It was instantly a hit. It was recognized as a fresh reinvention of the tired American action film scene and gave Keanu his fourth popular action hero, which rejuvenated his career. The film, John Wick, made $14 million in its debut. With its second chapter, it made $30 million, and Chapter 3 made $357 million. John Wick was doubling in profit, with every new installment, which was incredibly rare. John Wick 4 had made at least $509 million, which brings us to the fifth installment of the John Wick series. In an interview with Screen Rant, Chad Stahelski, the director, revealed that Lionsgate actually tried to secure a green light for a fifth chapter of the universe. It had actually greenlit the series after its fourth release. Of course, they wanted to maximize on the hype surrounding the film. Chapter 4 exceeded expectations and showed the world that an action movie directed by stuntmen could be a top-tier production. Lionsgate and Chad originally wanted to shoot Chapters 4 and 5 simultaneously because it would save the studio money, but Chad ended up declining because he wanted to create high-quality movies and was afraid that filming two at the same time would compromise that. According to Chad, what matters most about making another John Wick film is whether Keanu Reeves wants to do one, and whether they have enough great ideas for new stunts and new set pieces to make another chapter meaningful. Chad hinted to Hollywood Reporter that he and Keanu will travel to Japan and sit at their favorite spot to discuss the future. Just like previous John Wick films, they always start with the two sitting at the Imperial Hotel in Japan, a few glasses of whiskey, and an idea. So, depending on what they're able to come up with in that time, we may be blessed with a fifth John Wick chapter. What would a fifth chapter look like, though? If you've seen the fourth movie, and if you haven't, well, skip this part because it's a spoiler. Actually, just pause this and go catch up on the John Wick series, then come back because the films are so good. Again, if you're caught up with everything John Wick, you know a fifth movie might be difficult for the audience to get on board, since their favorite main character, played by Keanu Reeves, is dead. But wait a minute, let's really look at the end of Chapter 4. It makes sense to have a dog there to say goodbye to John one last time, a callback to losing his dog in the first film. But is it really goodbye? A conversation between Winston and the Bowery King is ambiguous and may imply that Wick is not actually gone. If you notice, the dog looks away from the grave and to something off-screen, which might hint that John was actually somewhere in the distance catching its attention. Perhaps his death was an elaborate plan all along so he could fly under the radar and get some bigger things done. It's important to look at the rest of the world as well. John Wick has created a universe, which means there are more than enough threads to pull on in future installments. 3 very interesting characters from the series come to mind: Mr. Nobody, Kane, and Akira. There is definitely material to work from to continue the series. And if you stayed for the post-credits scene, you'll know that Akira went looking for Kane to seek revenge for her father's passing. These 3 characters weren't fully developed yet, but that would leave a lot of room to explore them and their respective plot lines in sequels that honor John's legacy. Regardless of John Wick 5 and how that pans out, Reeves could return as John Wick in the future, even if in a lesser role. He shows up in Ballerina, which is the first spin-off of the film, with Ana de Armas as the star. She plays another determined assassin. Ian McShane, Angelica Houston, and the late Lance Reddick also star in the film, and you can expect to see it in theaters in 2024. Another thing we need to keep in mind is that although Keanu seemingly doesn't age, he does, and the role of John Wick is possibly one of his most physically demanding roles. The director has entertained other actors to enter the universe. Some of these include Charlize Theron and Colin Farrell. And we've seen Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde. She is a badass who could potentially bring a lot to the series. We could also possibly see the 5th chapter being a prequel set before Wick retired that features his wife. Drake alluded to this as a possibility by saying you could certainly go earlier with the story. The directors did a great job with a powerful but an ambiguous end to the 4th chapter. That leaves room for a story in the future. Whether John Wick 5 reveals he faked his own death to kill all remaining members of the High Table, Keanu Reeves returns only as a narrator in John Wick prequel, or John Wick 5 takes place much later. And we get to enjoy an older, more grizzled John Wick to come and be a mentor for someone like Akira. We have a lot to anticipate as we wait for the news to unfold, from 4 record-breaking box office slams to a possible 5th chapter we never expected. This is John Wick 5's exciting update.